Buonasera. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The legacy of my generation is a very big subject, one that I'm hardly qualified to embark upon, and yet one that I feel very passionate about. You see, my bio points out at my previous career as being in finance, and my current one in classic cars and vintage sailing boats. And yet I don't see myself as working in any of these. I actually work in recycling. And not this kind, but this kind. And this kind. And before you wonder, I don't turn these into IKEA furniture. I am lucky enough to spend my life surrounded by what I like to call retro assets. Not my wife. But that is not why I'm here today. Much more importantly, I recycle the spirit of cars from the 1930s all the way to the 1970s and exquisite wooden yachts. You see, it is one thing to help transform a restoration project like this one into the finished, beautiful working machine that is this one. Now, that alone will lift your soul. But the greatest joy is not in the technical challenge, but in re-establishing a connection with our past. You see, it didn't start on a rally, nor on water, but here, on my parents' home phone. The phone on which I would call my friend Harley to chat about 5th grade homework. And the phone on which I called a girl to ask her out on my first date, and she refused. But whilst these events were unremarkable to anyone other than me, what does seem remarkable in 2016 is that we used this phone from the day I was born until the day I left home. It was an object that we valued, that we never took for granted. And if it broke, we fixed it. And in some way, it was part of our family. Now, fast forward to 2008, and yet another contract for yet another mobile phone had come to an end. And I imagine that my first reaction would have been shared by many of you at some stage. And let's face it, it wasn't, I wonder what is wrong with it, or I'm going to try and fix it. No. It was actually, well, that's okay, because I can get a free upgrade. And at that moment, I consigned a valuable possession to the dustbin. Watch. Just like this. And almost instantly, I regretted that. And I thought back at our family phone, and I realized that this was a symptom of a much bigger problem. I had plunged headlong into a culture of consumerism, one that by working in finance for so long, I had previously encouraged from almost every angle. I had chased economic growth at the expense of pretty much anything else. And in doing so, I had lost touch with the child I had been, and with the generation before me. It seemed that the phone appeared as a metaphor for the strengths and the weaknesses of our generation, and that materialism had, somewhat ironically, devalued materials. And that in chasing the latest makes and models, we were actually losing sight of their very purpose. And so I began to think of my first true passion, classic cars. I loved looking at them, driving them, and saving them. And yes, this was recycling in its truest sense. Breathing life back into a relic, creating something extraordinary. Not a time machine, but a timeless machine. And as my business partner and I started to build the historic endurance rallying organization, or HERO, as it's come to be known, the essence of this appeal became even clearer to me. We were not recycling at the point of waste, but at the point of use. Now, in many ways, these images should fill us with optimism, with enthusiasm. Society has accepted the need to recycle. My children are taught about these things in school every day. And they make us feel good, don't they? It's a giant leap forward from a generation ago. And yes, recycling at the point of waste is green. It's responsible. It's laudable. And yet I fear it is too easy. You see, our children are taught about the value of recycling waste, but they're not taught how to value, or rather question, the value of the waste itself. Consumerism breeds short-termism. Today, we can buy anything we want, quicker than ever before, cheaper than ever before. Instant gratification via Google and Amazon and any other platform out there willing to lend a hand. And it's become so easy and so cheap that we throw away anything that isn't perfect and we just start again. Now, ideally, we would promote longevity, a society based on a real sense of value. Products that straddle generations, that recycle the workmanship of the past into the present, through the present, and into the future. As many speakers said, it's evolution, not revolution. Now, with that, please don't think that I am reactionary and that I'm wishing for text messages and emails to give way to messages by carrier pigeons. That's not the case. But I am genuinely concerned that we are cutting ourselves off from our own heritage. Now, I understand the benefits of mechanization, but I fear its impact. You see, we celebrate a young child being able to use an iPad. And yet, should we not be questioning whether she understands how it works? Because in learning how it works, she would value it for what it is, as much as what it does. Which brings me back to cars. Driving this 1930 Riley Brooklands is an exercise in recycling. Recycling a masterpiece in manufacturing. Recycling the driving skills of 90 years ago. Recycling the thrill of keeping something like this alive. And yes, ultimately, it's about recycling the narratives of previous generations. And understanding that today's cars have evolved from something individual, something magical, and something very precious. Now, that generation left a massive footprint from which we were able to evolve. And so did the generation that followed. Now, just by a little anecdote, when I had my first son, my mother came to visit, and she brought with her a bag of clothes that I wore in the first year of my life. And when my son wore them, I felt a warmth, a sense of belonging, and a sense of continuity between past and present. And now I look at my children's generation, and they're all on Facebook, heads down, texting away. Individual writing styles and ideas merged into something ungrammatical and generic at best. Fashion trends moving forward relentlessly without any pause for reflection. And worse, their imagination stifled. Now, I'm not suggesting that by driving a classic car or sailing a yacht, we will save mankind. No. But I am suggesting that by looking into our past and re-establishing a link with our heritage, we gain a sense of perspective and a sense of value. And I'm sure that you will agree with me that this is a perspective lost each time that we obsessively upgrade our phones or homogenize our children to such an extent that they cease to imagine. You see, my contention is that we have created an environment for our children that is more sheltered, more controlled, more out of tune with our own heritage, and less conducive to any form of active imagination than at any moment in the history of mankind. Their lives are controlled by the apps created by a small number of developers. In the background, we continue to expand our economy at the expense of our values. This is what created the credit crunch, where we even stole sales from the future to ensure growth today, and not because of genuine need, but in the name of a borrowed affordability, cheap money. And it is what today is creating a heritage crunch, where we break links from our past to continue to ensure profits in a material world. To go back to the footprints of our generation, my greatest fear is that our legacy will have been to wipe out the footprints of previous generations. Now, this is a disaster for so many reasons. So many of us can't fix a car engine. So many of us can't fix a home appliance, let alone change a fuse. Each time that we buy a new device or we throw away something that is broken or isn't perfect, we do so at the detriment of our culture. Our children may be safe playing indoors, alone, on their tablets, but in the process, we are creating an uninhabitable planet with ever-growing landfills full of dishwashers, smartphones, fridges. And every minute that we spend in this way is a minute that our children are not using their imagination. They're not creating. They're not inventing. And why? Because they're thinking inside the box. Sorry, let me rephrase that. They're thinking inside their screen. Now, it sounds negative, but it's not too late. We have such an opportunity to turn the tide. I have seen the joy of people touching, sitting in, driving a classic car, finding their ability to link past and present, their individualism driven by their imagination, and visibly so. And I do not believe it is a coincidence that over 35% of classic car owners do charitable work. Because the ability to link to your past fills one with the desire to link it to the future. We are, for example, proud and grateful to be able to use Hero today to support SOS Children Villages, a charity dedicated to young adults and children abandoned by the world's evils. Be it war-torn territories or tragic family circumstances, our aim is to provide these children and young adults with the opportunity to use classic cars as a chance to express themselves and to find a new future in our collective history and heritage. And to replace the void of one missing family by finding a new community as a new one. So, ladies and gentlemen, we can all be role models, each and every one of us. We can all be custodians and ambassadors of our heritage. So let's champion the imagination. Let's teach kids how to create, how to invent, how to build and understand and not just use, how to preserve and be proud of it. And I guarantee you that if we do that, we will ensure a much smoother passage between generations. And our legacy will not be one that destroys, but one that inspires, one that emboldens. Now let that be our generation's abiding legacy. Thank you.